Plasma cutting. What is plasma cutting? Well, plasma cutting is just like the electrode arc welding process. And instead of just taking your plasma arc up to a point where you're liquefying your base materials to gain fusion, what you're doing is you're bringing that arc, that stream of plasma, up to a point that's hot enough just to cut right through it. Typically, the plasma flow coming out of the torch tip is going to be roughly 27,000 degrees at its finest point. So you can imagine it just blows right through the material. Now, when you are cutting with a plasma torch, be aware that there is a safety switch. This trigger does not require the actual work clamp to initiate a plasma arc. So just be very careful. If you're fooling around with the trigger and you put it down by your side, you don't want to accidentally pull the trigger, it could blow your knee off, and nobody wants that. Now, when you are cutting with a plasma cutter, just like MIG welding or TIG welding or welding in general, you want to be as comfortable as you possibly can, okay? So bend in the knees, be relaxed. The thing about plasma cutting is it's very accurate. It'll pick up any jitters in your hand. So if you start to cut and your upper body is really tense, you're gonna jerk and move all over the place, and you're gonna see that in your cut. So if you're using just the cutting tip, you have to keep that cutting tip a 1/16 of an inch away, no more than 1/8 of an inch. The closer you are, the finer the cut's gonna be. Now, what we're gonna do is we're gonna use what's called a drag shield. Well, we'll put the drag shield on. Now, when you are cutting with just the tip, you do have a probability of the cutting tip sticking to your material. This is called double arcing. You're gonna have an arc point coming off the side of your tip, which will sometimes fuse it to the surface of the material you're cutting. Now, drag shield will keep it at that 1/16 of an inch away from the tip the entire time. So when you're cutting, you can put the drag shield down on your material and you just guide your way through it. Usually when you're using some kind of fence or guide, straight edge, you're gonna wanna use a drag shield. If you're doing really fine stuff like cutting out numbers or letters or something more detailed, you're gonna wanna just use the tip, and you wanna try to tune your machine for the speed you are going. That's another thing about plasma cutting. Plasma cutting, you wanna go as fast through your cut path as you can while you are still cutting. But if you go too slow, the cut is gonna get wider and you're gonna blow away too much material, and you're gonna have an inconsistent cut. But be aware, if you go too fast and you're no longer cutting, you're just gonna spatter out material. It's gonna fire out material from the cut path. So try to go as quickly as possible while still cutting when you are cutting. Now, I'm gonna demonstrate. When you are cutting, you want this guy here, the retainer cup, this torch, to be perfectly perpendicular in the round. So when it's down like this, all the way around perpendicular, straight up, and you want to keep it that way. So start your plasma flow, come into the cut, and try to keep it perpendicular as you cut. Now, if you see me, I'm bracing and supporting. I like to brace and support. Plasma cutting is a very delicate, very elegant way to cut metal. All right, you want to be nice and relaxed. I know I'm putting a lot of emphasis on that, but it's true. If you're very tense with this and you're holding onto the torch too tight, you're gonna get shaky, and of course that's gonna show up in your cut. So just be nice and relaxed, brace and support, come into the cut, and just practice a little bit. All right, so what we're gonna do, I'm gonna fire up this machine here. I'm gonna put my number 5 shade shield safety glasses on. I have all the protective gear on, my leather gloves, and I'm just gonna start off. You're gonna notice that this plasma is going to start without being connected to the work clamp. So you can start that off and then come into your cut. Like so. So now you can also see that this cut is really nice and smooth. That means I was going at a pretty good pace for the heat and temperature settings that I've chosen for the plasma cutter. Now, if you want to do a nice, even, straight line, you can use anything that's a straight edge. For a fence, some people call it a fence, I call it a straight edge. So all you have to do is square this up, put it close to your line. Now, when you are cutting with a fence, a straight edge, you want to set up the torch and the straight edge so the distance away from the line that you are cutting matches where the guide is going to hit the side of your drag shield. So if you set up like so and you're coming in, you start your cut off, come into the cut. As you can see, if you look here, I got about a good 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch from the guide. That's the distance between the side where it hit the drag shield to the actual cut point. And that is straight cutting. Be safe, have fun, and practice.